You know how sometimes you really want to get up to speed on something, maybe a big cultural moment, but digging through it all just feels overwhelming.
Totally. Like facing your own personal disaster movie, just trying to get the facts.
Exactly. Well, that's why we're here. Today, we're doing a deep dive into a real event movie from 1974, Earthquake.
Yeah, and we're working off a pretty detailed review of the film. It's a great way to get the essence, why it hit so hard back then, its whole place in cinema history.
Right. Think of this as your quick guide. You don't need the full 122 minutes right now, but maybe we'll pique your interest.
Could happen. So let's set the scene. It's L.A., 1974, lots of personal stuff brewing. Everyone's got their own little drama.
And the city itself is just, simmering, ready to crack.
And then it does. A huge quake hits, and the movie, according to this review, follows all these different people, their lives suddenly crashing together. Classic disaster setup.
But with a twist, right? This wasn't just a movie you watched. It had Sensurround.
Ah, yes. Sensurround. It was revolutionary, really. They didn't just crank up the volume. No, they had these special speakers, huge things, putting out super low-frequency sound waves, deep bass you felt in your bones. The seats literally shook.
Wow. So they wanted you to feel the earthquake.
It was the whole idea. Total immersion. Make you feel like you were right there in it.
Okay, so digging into the movie itself, based on this review, it sounds like it ticks all the 70s disaster boxes.
Big.
Stars, crisscrossing stories.
Oh, yeah. All the tropes are there. You've got the all-star cast, the interwoven subplots, massive destruction, definitely a heroic sacrifice.
And that bittersweet ending to make you feel something through the rubble.
Exactly. The review calls it pure spectacle, and even if it feels a bit predictable now, that structure is sort of part of the charm, isn't it? You kind of know what you're getting.
But the review mentions they take their sweet time getting to the quake itself. Nearly an hour.
Yeah, it's a slow burn, apparently. Deliberate choice. Spent a lot of time setting up Charlton Heston's marriage problems, Ava Gardner's whole deal, George Kennedy the cop.
So you care about them before the ground opens up.
That's the goal. Build the personal stakes, so when the skyscrapers start falling, it hits harder because you're invested. Theoretically, anyway.
And when it does hit, sounds like it's nonstop. Dams breaking, buildings collapsing.
Relentless destruction, yeah. Freeways buckling, mass panic. The review paints a picture of total citywide chaos.
Which is different from, say, the towering inferno, right? That was all contained in one building.
Good point. This review highlights that difference. Earthquake goes wide, showing devastation across L.A., makes it feel like nowhere is safe, really amplifies the scale.
But the script itself, the review wasn't exactly glowing. Serviceable, but melodramatic.
Yeah, that's the gist. Apparently the dialogue can be a bit clunky, especially in the first hour.
And it mentions a wild subplot with Ava Gardner and Lorne Greene. What was that about?
Well, the review suggests it's maybe a bit much involving their characters' relationship, maybe an age gap thing that feels kind of heightened, even for this kind of movie.
So melodramatic.
Pretty much. But the review also says, oddly, that once the destruction starts, those melodramatic stakes actually start to land better because, life or death.
Okay, let's talk about the people then, the performances. Charlton Heston sounds like classic Heston.
Absolutely. The review nails it. Square-jawed, grim, competent, convincingly anguished. He's the rock.
The anchor in the chaos.
Exactly. Holding it together while everything falls apart. You need that in a disaster flick.
Then Ava Gardner as his wife. Scenery chewing. Operatic intensity. Sounds like she went big.
Oh, yeah. Maybe bordering on camp, the review suggests, but in a way that kind of works with the film's heightened reality, adds to the spectacle, maybe unintentionally.
Part of that weird 70s disaster movie charm.
Precisely. But George Kennedy gets singled out as a real standout.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Tough, grounded, and oddly moving is how the review puts it. He's the everyday guy, the cop trying to keep order. A bit more relatable, maybe.
Provides a contrast to the operatic stuff.
Right. And then you've got Geneviève Bujold, who the review feels was maybe a bit wasted as the love interest.
Okay. And Richard Roundtree, fresh off Shaft.
Yeah, he plays this daredevil biker type. Lots of charm, apparently, but then he finds his inner hero when things get rough. A nice little arc.
Fun. But then there's that subplot, the Marjoe Gortner one.
Oh, boy. Yeah, the review calls this one strange and disturbing. He's a creepy grocery clerk.
Okay.
Who then gets drafted into the National Guard during the chaos and apparently abuses his power. It's described as a mix of exploitation and social commentary.
Yikes. That sounds tonally weird.
Really weird. Like maybe trying to say something dark about human nature under pressure, but maybe doing it in a kind of uncomfortable, maybe even sleazy way. The review definitely flags it.
So overall, the cast is a tonal roller coaster, but somehow it works.
That's the takeaway. A real mix of styles, some grounded, some way over the top, but against the backdrop of the earthquake, it coalesces into something memorable, if uneven.
Right. Okay, let's shift to the visuals, because that was the big draw, wasn't it? The effects.
Absolutely. Jaw-dropping for their time. That's what the review says. And you got to remember, no CGI.
All practical stuff.
All practical. Miniatures, incredibly detailed ones, matte paintings to extend the sets, lots of dangerous stunt work, real physical effects.
So when buildings crumble, they're actually crumbling miniature buildings.
Exactly. And the review praises the scale, the detail, collapsing freeways, falling debris. It looked convincing and huge back then. Director Mark Robson apparently staged it all really well, managing the chaos so you could still follow it.
And Sensurround just amplified all that visually stunning destruction.
Totally. It wasn't just seeing it, it was feeling those rumbles as the miniatures collapsed on screen. That physical element was key to the original experience.
Which, as the review notes, you just don't get at home.
Nope. That gimmick, as the review calls it, is lost. And yeah, the effects look dated now compared to CGI.
But there's a charm to that datedness.
I think so. The review calls it a technical triumph for 1974 and points to a tactile realism. You see real things being destroyed. There's a weight to it that sometimes CGI lacks, you know.
I get that. What about the rest of the sound, the music? Yeah. John Williams did the score, right?
He did, yeah. But interestingly, the review says his score is notably restrained.
Really? For a disaster movie?
Yeah, less bombastic, more focused on mood and tension, sort of letting the sound effects do the heavy lifting during the quake itself.
And the main sound effect was the earthquake.
Definitely. Described as a rolling, guttural rumble. That sound, combined with Sensurround, was designed to be deeply unsettling. The review basically says the sound was the experience.
Makes sense. Beyond the shaking and rumbling were there deeper ideas, themes.
Yeah, the review digs into a few. One big one is urban hubris. You know, the idea that we build these massive cities, these giant skyscrapers and dams.
Thinking we've conquered nature.
Exactly. And the earthquake just shatters that illusion. Shows how fragile our arrogant engineering really is.
That's a classic disaster theme. And the fragility of life itself.
Oh, for sure. The review emphasizes that nobody is safe, not even the main characters. It raises the stakes, makes it feel more real, less like a typical Hollywood movie where the stars are guaranteed to survive.
And how authority figures handle it. Cops, politicians.
That gets explored too. Authority under pressure. The review mentions order breaking down, reflecting maybe that post-Watergate, post-Vietnam cynicism about institutions.
Interesting. So the structures we rely on crumble, literally and figuratively.
Kind of, yeah. Which leads to another theme. Personal versus collective survival. When everything falls apart, what matters?
Human connection, sacrifice, love.
Exactly that. The focus shifts from saving buildings to saving people to those basic human connections. It finds heroism and maybe some darkness, too, in how individuals react.
Okay, but it wasn't perfect. The review calls out flaws. The first act being heavy on soap opera.
Yeah, clunky dialogue, melodrama. Sounds like you have to sit through a fair bit of relationship angst before the action kicks in. Common issue with these ensemble pieces, maybe.
Trying to give everyone a backstory.
Right. And we already mentioned the Marjoe Gortner subplot, again, tonally mismatched or uncomfortable. That seems to be a recurring criticism.
Stands out like a sore thumb, maybe?
Seems like it. And obviously, the dated effects and the loss of Sensurround are drawbacks for watching it today. Your sofa probably won't shake.
Probably not, but the review makes a cool point that these flaws were kind of part of its charm.
Yeah. Capturing that strange blend of grandeur and trash that makes some 70s disaster movies so much fun. They have a specific vibe, you know?
Totally. A product of their time. So, despite the flaws, what are the absolute highlights, according to this review?
The Hollywood dam collapse gets a big mention. Still visually stunning, apparently. A huge set piece.
Iconic image, right? The wall of water.
Totally. And then on a smaller scale, the department store destruction. More claustrophobic, terrifying in a different way, trapped inside as things fall apart.
Creates a different kind of suspense.
Exactly. And George Kennedy's performance gets another nod, that gruff, grounded heroism. He clearly made an impression.
And the ending. Not everyone makes it.
Nope. The review highlights that. It leaves you with a quiet ache beneath the chaos. Suggests it doesn't tie everything up neatly, which adds some emotional weight.
So, wrapping this up,
Uh-huh.
the review basically positions Earthquake as this big, maybe slightly messy, but ultimately thrilling example of 70s disaster cinema.
Pretty much. High stakes, high camp, blending spectacle with star power and genuine panic. Dated, sure, but a rubble stream classic of the genre.
It fully commits to what it is.
It really does. It's a fascinating snapshot of filmmaking from that time, flaws and all.
And the review ends nicely. When the ground starts shaking, the screen still rumbles. Even without Sensurround, it still has power.
Yeah, that captures it well. The core drama, the scale of it, still works on some level. The spectacle still lands.
So maybe something for everyone listening to think about. How has our view of disaster movies, and maybe real disasters, changed since 1974? What parts of a movie like Earthquake still feel impactful today, even without the original gimmicks?
That's a great question. How does presentation shape our understanding? Think about other disaster films or even news coverage of real events. What resonates now versus then? Definitely something to mull over, even if hopefully your own ground feels pretty solid right now.